Well, welcome back, everybody, to Beyond the Box. I'm thrilled for this episode today because normally we only get to talk to one person on this. But this time, when I was talking with the Aryeo team, they're like, hey, why don't we bring on the whole founding team to have a conversation about what we're up to in prop tech? So it's my absolute privilege to bring on Branick, Brendan, and Matt, co-founders, I believe, boys, all co-founders of Aryeo. I hope I'm saying that right. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us on, Mike. We're excited to be here.
Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Okay, so for those that don't know you, and apologies, I got like this weird light over my head. It's like my head disappears. But anyways, for those that don't know Aryeo, give me, and whoever wants to jump in first, give me the view from 40,000 feet. What is that elevator pitch? What is Aryeo?
We are a real estate content platform. By content, we mean pictures, videos, floor plans, 3D tours, and really our driving kind of mission and thesis is to work with anyone in the real estate industry that generates that content and anyone that consumes it. So we work with everyone from real estate photographers, videographers, creators, to agents, brokerages, MLSs, and portals. Love
it. Okay, so I'm gonna just hit this one head on right up front because you guys look super young. So tell me, how a group of guys, get into building a content platform for the real estate industry, because the real estate industry it needs a lot of these things, but I feel like these are these different platforms out there, and you guys are like, hey, let's just go and do this. So what was the story? How does a group of buddies, were you guys friends before? Like, how does that all come to fruition?
Yeah, I'll start off, and Matt and Brendan can kind of fill in some gaps for me here. But
yeah,
we all grew up together originally in Minnesota, so we've all been friends for a very long time. Matt and I went to grade school together. We all went to high school together. We were always kind of working on different projects and ideas. And one of our first jobs actually was working as a real estate photographer. So we started a small kind of photography company, going around taking pictures and videos for the real estate industry. And that was even just as like a profession, something interesting that we didn't even really think about, right? I think most people today go online, you go to Zillow, you go to the portals, you don't really think about how the photos and the content gets up to Zillow and who owns that content. Like, what is that whole process? But it's so important, right? If you think about like searching for a home, but not being able to see any photos, that'd be a terrible process. No one would go on Zillow. No one would look at the portals. They're so essential, but no one really ever talks about the people that are out there actually generating all of this content for the entire industry. And that was really interesting for us. So we worked as real estate photographers throughout high school. We worked with a couple of companies doing that and kind of saw this whole content side of the industry. And ultimately what we saw was a big opportunity there to bring the people that are generating a lot of that content deeper into the real estate process, tie them into the portals, tie them into MLSs, into agents and brokerages, and build some great tools for both sides of the parties there.
Love it. So talk me through this. So one of you gets a job as a real estate photographer and they're like, hey, you guys should all do this, or how does that work? Like how does that start? There's always the first one, right?
Yeah, it kind of started off just not even being specific to real estate. Branick had gotten a drone, and this was before drones. They didn't have cameras. It was just like an early Phantom 1 from DJI. Like we're rubber banding a GoPro onto the leg of the drone to be able to take any sort of picture or video. So initially, Branick was working at a golf course at the time, so he was just flying it around, taking videos and pictures of the golf course. So it wasn't even real estate related at that point. It just so happened that we were also friends with our parents, I guess, were friends with a bunch of real estate agents. We kind of ran in a crowd of people knew that Branick had gotten this drone and that he was posting pictures online with it. So it very quickly and naturally progressed to, great, you have a drone with a camera. Can you come take pictures of this house that I'm selling? And the old videos are sweet because they're like just terrible fisheye from a GoPro, and the whole world is like warped, and it was like as good as it could be. And it was still like you'd see the video and everyone was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like in the air.
No one had seen it.
No.
I mean, this was very early on. This was like 2012, 2013. So really there weren't this wasn't really the hot thing yet. Now everyone and their friend has a drone. We don't really do anything with drones now, but back then we were literally replacing helicopter pilots at different companies. Companies would call us like, hey, we'd hire a helicopter pilot to come in, or a small plane to come in and film this property. And we're like, yeah, we'll take $100 and we'll come do it for you.
We had very low, we had very low costs at that point. So we were willing to work for cheap because $100 is more than we had otherwise. So
I mean, you're still going to high school, right? The overhead cost is like, it's your opportunity time to like study some more, go shoot some, some properties. Okay, awesome.
It was easy.
So you do this for a while, you're getting traction. Tell me what was the conversation like where you're like, listen, we should probably like formalize this. Like talk me through that process. Cause there's a lot of founders out there that are working in industries or potential founders, and they see these problems, they see these challenges, but there's that apprehension to make that leap. Like, I'm going to do this, right? Like, I'm going to start this company. I see that opportunity. Talk me through your sort of leap or where that pivot point was.
Yeah. I'm actually a big anti-believer in the quote unquote, like light bulb moment.
I said pivot point. Come on.
Yeah. No. I mean, I really don't think there's ever like the one moment like, oh my goodness, here's the idea, right? This makes perfect sense. Let's build a company around this and do it. I think those moments actually very rarely exist. I think usually most founders I talk to, everyone has their story they tell to make it sound like there's a light bulb moment. But really, once you start digging, they're like, no, this person was like obsessing over this for like 4 or 5 years prior to that. And everyone thought it was really weird. And they kept doing it. And then all of a sudden in history, they make it look like this great light bulb moment. But I mean, in essence, it kind of started like that. We were working as photographers. We were seeing all the interesting things there. We kept doing that for a couple of years. We were simultaneously also running Facebook ads for real estate brokerages. Brent and I were doing that a bit. So we're seeing the advertising side of things. We were working on the lead gen side as well. And ultimately saw a bigger opportunity to kind of streamline that. We're like, photographers are generating so much important content for the industry. There's so much money spent in the industry on marketing and advertising and leads and all these other tools. How can we put those two parties together so that as soon as content is generated at its source, we can automate and generate marketing, ads, portal listings, promotions, all of that just with one click right away. And in many ways, we started doing that just manually. We're like, okay, first, let's just see what we can do. Let's call some agents and let's get them to hire us to run their Facebook ads. Let's get them to hire us to build them a website and just learn all of those pieces. And as we kind of learn those pieces over the years, then I think the turning point for us was, okay, how do we turn this from a services oriented business, something that we're just spending, 1 hour in is $100 out, to actually let's making some software, let's start a proper team, and let's grow something that we can actually scale everywhere. That was probably more of the turning point for us.
So I mean, at that point, unless either one of you codes, you need a developer at that point. Is that the first hire? Or talk to me about, okay, we're going to build this tech platform. Now we have to build technology. Like, how do we do that?
Yeah. We saved a lot of money.
I was going to say, thankfully, Branick and Brendan are both technical, or
well, there you go.
became technical very quickly. So
how many YouTube
Branick,
did you watch? No.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, seriously. So I'm the only one on the team that can't write a line of code. I just came in and I don't know what I do. Just keep everybody happy, because you can't code all day and remain happy. I don't know how they.
You got people skills, Matt.
Yeah.
That was something that was important for us, though, right? Because being kind of coming from that, going through that pivot from actually being on the photography side, on the content creation side, and saying, okay, if we were that one real estate photographer for agents all across the country, and we figured out a very seamless way to automate a lot of these marketing processes to get that content up onto the portals, into the MLS. And we want to change kind of the way that we're structuring this from, as Branick mentioned, that service-based business into an actual software platform. Not being able to actually jump in and execute on that idea wasn't something that, we thought for the three of us would be wise. We wanted to be able to jump in, actually begin to execute on that idea and, make that a reality, and then learn from those initial customers that we were working with and iterate over and over and over again until we figured out kind of what that right product was for initially real estate photographers, and then eventually those other parties that Branick was mentioning earlier that are working with this content. So to be completely honest with you, we've learned quite a bit on the technical side over the last few years building up this product, but that was somewhat intentional, right? We wanted to get into the weeds and figure it all out ourselves too.
Yeah. I mean, for the first summer, it was we'd saved up enough money so we didn't need to work other jobs. And we went to campus and we locked ourselves in a room and we're like, we're not leaving until we have a website that people can log into, add photos to, and download. And it was a complete shit show behind the scenes, but we ended up leaving the summer with a website that people could log into, upload photos to, and download, which was the biggest success of the summer there. Now the customers, that took us a couple more months to get our first customer after that. But I mean, in essence, that was really all it was. It was like, hey, let's start with the smallest building block of the website. All right, we need a homepage. Okay, great. We have a homepage. We need a website that someone can log into. Great, they can log in. All right, we need something they can add a photo to. Check. And we just kept going until we had something that was usable. And then we tried to get it out there as quickly as we could.
So that kind of flies in the face of what a lot of people do, where they've got this idea, they maybe do it a little bit seed capital to get that MVP, and then they want to take that to go to the market, get some traction, get more capital. But what I'm hearing, it sounds like, you guys are like, let's just roll up our sleeves and do it all. So did you think about how you could fund this other than we just need to offset not going to work for the summer? Or was it, we need to think about hiring people as we grow? Like, what was that thought process as you were starting out at that stage?
Yeah, a lot of this was simultaneous while we were still students at college. So you have a little bit of luxury of time throughout that period, right? Where you're not, you have shelter, you have food, you can just work. It's very nice. But I think for us, always the biggest thing, we've never started the company because we wanted to raise money. Raising money was always the, maybe a means to getting towards what we want, but it was never like the end in itself. And we started first, like, okay, we want to tackle these problems first and take it as far as we possibly can. And there was really nothing that we ever felt. And even right now, I think we have some fantastic investors that have given us capital, but like, we never try to be in the position where we're capital constrained by some of those problems, right? Like, if we need to build a website, we're going to learn how to build a website. Or if we need to build a team now, we're going to try to put that team together. But in the early days, it was very much, let's solve a good business first. And actually, we were making quite a bit of money. We easily could have not raised money and continued down that path. And that was a conversation we had once things got going a bit and we had big companies starting to sign up and use us. But we were like, hey, we could build, a nice lifestyle business here, or we could really go for it and take on some bigger risk and tackle some bigger problems in the industry that we do want to raise money for and build a big team around and actually execute on, which is what we're doing now.
Love it. And I want to come back to that. But before we do, I want to talk about, so you've got the platform now, and now you have the opportunity to go across the US, right? You've now got this platform that you can curate. How do you go from doing a service-based business to now having this technology platform that now you want to sell across the country? How do you shift that? Like, what was the first step, and then how did you get the dominoes to fall thereafter?
I think it was important at that point. By the time that the first line of code was written, at least Branick was the one that wrote that first line of code. Branick had completely separated himself from the service business. Like, he was not involved at all. He wasn't shooting homes anymore. At that point, I think I probably had just wrapped it up. I got my real estate license, so I was actually practicing real estate and doing that. So it was pretty natural because we had pretty much removed ourselves from any sort of service-based business to begin with. It was there was really never a decision point that had to be made to like shut down the service business to focus on software. We pretty much had already done it. So it made it pretty smooth transition.
Awesome. So then you're going to go with the tech side. How do you go and get that first customer, and where do you get them from?
Yeah. There was a lot of cold calls for the first 6 to 8 months.
Talk to me about that.
Calls.
Yeah, talk to me about that.
So
like,
many
what is that? Yeah, let's describe that. Like, because I think this is
it was way harder than
it,
anticipated.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it was actually way harder. All of our defaults are probably more in the building a product mode than the selling mode. That's all of our mindsets always. We'd rather build than sell personally, which is good. We're aware of it, but it definitely leads to some issues if you're trying to grow quickly on certain fronts. That's where you need to fill in with the rest of the team. But for the first 6 months, we just went down lists of different photography companies. We're like, okay, we're going to start on this side of the market. Let's start with photography companies that service the real estate industry. Let's start calling them and reaching out. And boy, there must have been like a 1% conversion rate of people that would actually pick up and talk to me and then give me a shot and actually try to use it. And the website barely worked because we didn't know how to make a website. Finally, we got one person to pick up, Tom Sheehan on the South Shore of Boston. He's been a photographer there for the last 15 years. He's still customer on our platform today. He was customer number one. I've gone to visit him multiple times. Great guy. He just felt bad for me though. I think he just answered the phone, and I literally remember calling him. This is junior year of college, and I was walking out on the back deck of one of the buildings, and I think he was like, yeah, I'll give it a go. It sounds like you put a lot of work into this. Like, I'll try it for you. And I feel so bad because I literally made his workflow process probably take twice as long for the first few months. Like, I think he had to double up all of his work because it just didn't work half the time. So he would also like use another service alongside ours. We've gotten it to the point now where he's now using it and very happy, and it saved him a lot of time since. But that was the first one to go. And we got a couple more like that, but honestly, it was a long grind for a bit. The dominoes really started to fall once we discovered these Facebook groups, which I will let someone else dive into, but that was the big turning point for our sales.
Yeah. That's definitely, since I couldn't code, when I actually made the jump to start full time, that's all I did was just sit in a little room and call people, and called thousands of photographers, got a few. I could probably name every single one that answered the phone because there were so few of them. But it was awesome to be getting that. But yeah, as Branick mentioned, sort of the turning point in the sense of actually getting customers was we discovered there was this like underground group of photographers on Facebook, real estate photographers on Facebook, and they like their entire life revolved around this Facebook group. There was one specific Facebook group, I think it's just called Real Estate Photography, and it's got, I don't know how many members now, probably 20,000, maybe 25,000 real estate photographers all in one group, which there probably aren't 25,000 real estate photographers in the country. So that had like every single one of them and more were in this group, and it had incredible engagement, just the most active Facebook group I've ever seen. And our game plan from the start was, let's just infiltrate this group, not in like a salesy way, but just somehow continually have our name be seen in some way. And that was usually just engaging with the conversations and somehow getting creative with, I don't know, piping in on whatever the conversation of the day was, posting something that gets people going. And that ended up being kind of the most beneficial thing we ever did, was never spend a dime on the actual marketing aspect, but just get involved with this one Facebook group. And all of a sudden we had people signing up left and right. Not ever selling to them, but just being involved in the community.
There was never a post that was like, hey, this is the Aryeo platform with X feature, Y feature, Z feature, go check it out. That was never really the approach at all. But if you consider, 20,000 real estate photographers, you're going to have photographers of all sorts of skills, starting out, seasoned photographers that have been around for 25 years, people jumping in on, hey, I'm just getting my business started. What are some tips? Hey, I have a team of 15 photographers. This is how we run our operation. So identifying problems all across the real estate photography business as a whole, we could jump in and comment, we could pose questions, right? And use that kind of as our in to some of these conversations.
Love it. So at what point did you guys know that you were onto something versus you felt like you might be going down the wrong rabbit hole once again? Because to your point, Branick, when you're making all those calls and nothing's converting, it's very, very demoralizing. And so, it's like, do we keep going forward? Do we do this? But then you latch onto something. Talk to me about, where that decision was of like, should we keep doing this versus I think we're onto something?
The first big wall there to get over was the summer after we graduated from college. We needed to make enough money to pay rent. That was it. That was the marker. It was like, can we make rent and can we pay for food? That was it. If we could make enough money to do that at that point in time, then the idea had enough merit that we could run with it. If we couldn't do that, then we were going to start a different company. Because then it was just like, all right, maybe there's not enough room here to go. And we did it, barely, somehow.
I
less food.
I look back at how much money we were making. I'm like, how could we pay rent? Like that the numbers do not add up. I don't know how we were paying rent.
I don't either. Yeah, there was a lot of credit cards, but we did that. We made it through them. Then I actually think the next hardest hurdle to make it through is when you're making money But it's actually, this is, I think, the most interesting thing talking to founders, when you have lots of early success, but it's just like the wrong kind of metrics or the wrong kind of success towards building a really big business. If you want to build a really big business, if you want to make $100 million a year, you got to make very intentional that you're making money from the right people early on, that the contract values are going to be able to grow at the rate that you need them to grow, that they're the appropriate sizes. That is the hard piece. You can make $1 million a year, a couple $1 million a year, but can you build a really big company around that? Can you raise venture money around it? That's a very hard line to eliminate early on, I think, especially when you're just starting out from zero with an idea. And maybe you can bring the idea from 0 to 1, but going from 1 to 10, I think that's a really hard piece that a lot of companies get trapped in. And I mean, we've had to make hard decisions where we're like, hey, we're going to change our pricing. We're going to give this away for free. We're going to do this differently. Yes, we could be making like 3 times the amount of money right now, but we just know long-term that's not going to be where we want our customers and where we want the business coming from. Those decisions are always the hardest. And I hope we've made the right ones. Time will tell.
Well, it's so interesting, right? Because you get to this point and then you have to ask that question, do you want to go to that next level, or are you happy staying there? Right. And then you've got, it's not just one founder, you've got the 3 of you here, right? So, was that an easy conversation to have of saying, let's take this and make it go big? Or was that something that you guys had to work through together just to make sure everybody was in alignment?
It was a very intentional conversation.
Yeah.
We approached it head on and didn't skirt around it at all, which I think was the right move. I think at the end of the day, we were all in this to do something like fun and exciting. Like, yes, obviously make a lot of money is hopefully the byproduct of it, but doing something small that ends up being like a good success, but a small success was like, yes, that's interesting. But I don't know, taking like a moonshot and expanding the idea and really going for something big. And if you hit it, then it could be like a career defining thing. Like, that sounds a lot more fun. And we felt like there were the right paths in place. There was a lot of stuff that was to be explored, but we felt that it was, I don't know, more exciting opportunities that were out there. So we opted to go for some moonshots.
Love it.
Go ahead, I mean, that kind of, I was just going to say, I think that kind of happened after we were making enough money to pay rent, and like we could see that path there, right? Yeah. Prior to that, we're like, all right, we had to make it through that hurdle on our own, I think, bootstrapping to that point. Because prior to that, we're like, okay, yeah, great. We just need a business that makes money. They're like, wait, we can do this. Like, there's also a lot of other businesses that we could start that would probably do this for us. Not in like an arrogant way at all, but I think there's a lot of businesses you could start and you can pour your soul into and you can make a good living doing, right? Then we're like, all right, let's try to do something a bit bigger here. And that's when we made the decision to take money from investors and raise capital. And I think at that decision too, you all have to be on board. There's no turning back from that as well. And you got to make sure your investors are all on board with what you want to. And just making sure you're all in alignment on that long-term vision and running for it.
Which, to take that money, I think that for me, you have to have that validation from the market. So I'd be curious from all 3 of you, what's the one story that resonates from a customer when they've used the platform and they're like, this has done, this for me, or this has done that for me? Because I think to take on institutional money, right, you have to have that confidence, and you love your product and you see that with attraction, but usually it's those customer stories. So I'd be really curious, if from each of you, actually, which story resonates with you from your customers.
It's a good question.
It is a good
Brendan,
question.
Any standouts? Yeah.
For me, and now this is a bit of a more recent example, but one of the brokerages that we work with out in Colorado, we started working with them back in, and guys remind me if I'm slightly off in date, I believe it was April of 2020, March of 2020, which funny timing with the pandemic. And
the world was shutting down, minor detail. Yeah.
On that, but nevertheless, over the first couple months of that onboarding, they actually had come inbound to us and reach out, having worked with a handful of our photographers in the Denver area. And they reached out to us, had a ton of their agents engaging with the product and using it for various marketing purposes, to organize that listing content and host that for them, and to almost have validation from a party in the industry that we had hoped to eventually be able to build that perfect product for around content very early in the life of the company, and have them be willing to jump on board, assist with that very early product development process, and then to see them continue to engage with the product over those many months of onboarding, and then begin to kind of use our platform as a gold record of their listing content, was really validating for us with some of the initial theses that we'd had around content and where we could take this long term. And I think having a few cases like that validate that initial thesis, while you don't want to use it as a false signal for what's to come, nevertheless, for us, we love to be in the product. So being able to iterate with a customer like that, who's so supportive, so helpful, was, I think, a great experience for me personally, as we got that initial brokerage product built and iterated, as I said, just over those first few months of their onboarding.
Love it.
Yeah.
Matt,
Branick, you have one?
Yeah, I'll let you go first, though, Matt.
Okay. I think I guess it's almost not a specific customer. It's more of like the customer base of photographers that was always interesting to me. So real estate photography is a very like niche industry. There's only a few companies that, dedicate many resources to actually building software for real estate photographers specifically. But that said, the people who do it are like very ingrained in the community. Like they are former real estate photographers who are building software for photographers. So it's difficult to compete with people that know it like that intimately. That said, we were kind of in the same boat of having practiced it before, so we knew what real estate photographers needed. But I guess like the big decision in looking to raise money and looking to like, can we take this early success and bring it onward, was we were able to go from pretty much having, in 2019, 0 properties uploaded on our platform to within 2 years, like 1% of the entire country was being uploaded on our platform every year. And we were able to do that with 3 people, 2 people coding and one of us doing whatever I do. It was, I guess, like a vote of confidence in like our ability to just execute on something, which I think I can't be overlooked. Like you did something. You didn't just have an idea and maybe it's a good idea, maybe it's a bad idea, but no, we had the idea, we went out and built it, and actually were able to be successful in doing it. And then kind of tying that to what Brendan said, the original like idea around the business wasn't just to build software for real estate photographers, but it was to build software that uses and enhances all of this content that's being used in the industry. So that starts with photographers, and that's why we started building for them. But it goes far beyond that. It goes into the agents, to the portals, the MLSs, the brokerage, like the full stack of real estate touches all of this real estate content at some point. And that's where I had like the confidence of like, if we were to raise money, is there a big enough market? Like, yes, the market theoretically is all of real estate. Every single part of the real estate process touches the listing content piece. And if we are the end all be all experts on how this content is generated, moves, and is used, there's, endless opportunity to be able to take advantage of that. So I was happy with our ability to execute initially, and then I was happy with the outlook on the market as a whole. So I think that's kind of the 2 factors that went into, would we be able to take on capital and be able to use it wisely?
Yeah. They both covered a little bit of my stories. I think that one, for our second year business, going from really almost no usage to 1% of the country's listings was pretty powerful to see. I think we still underestimate how quickly that grew. And then 2, if you scroll through our customer inbox, you're going to see the word like love, like so much, like seriously, like people are addicted to it. And it also causes them to also kind of hate it at times. Like if our servers go down or something, our phones are blowing up. Like it is mission critical software. It is like all of a sudden, like they are on a rampage. which is exactly where we want to be, right? We want to be making software that is essential to customers, whether they love or hate it, it's essential to them. I hope they love it. But it's like right there. And I think seeing that usage from our customers, that's the kind of products that we want to spend our time on. It's so tough if you're just building some tool that, can be optionally used. So that was a big selling point for us, and just seeing, we enjoyed working with small businesses too. So many of our customers are small businesses themselves. They usually have 1 or 2 employees. We help them get started, get them up to speed. Some of our biggest customers have started their whole businesses with us and gone from like 1 person to like 30 people. So that's pretty fulfilling to see as well.
So I just want to take that forward then, because that's super cool. And thanks all for sharing, guys. That's, again, I think that's what resonates most with people, those stories, right? But on that, to take it forward from there, for people that aren't familiar with your platform and haven't utilized it, what are your customers saying they love? Like, what is it that you're doing for the brokerages and the agents that they're loving so much? And, this is your opportunity to sort of tell them, like, this is why you guys have 1% of these listings here. So, whoever wants to take this one on, I'm curious what they're loving so much.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, especially for real estate agents, is they're busy, they're running around, right? This content's very important to your success of marketing your listing online. As soon as you get that, the last thing you want to be worrying about is how to open a zip file and resize the images and put them onto this marketing person or send them to this admin. Like, literally, as soon as they get the pictures with our software, we have a website waiting for them. We have all of their flyers, all of their branding, their Facebook ads, all of their social media. It's all just waiting right there. They don't need to do anything. They can go customize it. You can change it. You can go do it. But tying together that process that previously was an email, a Dropbox link, a Matterport link, a zip file, an MLS posting, and all these different things, all of a sudden alleviates a lot of pain if you're a busy agent that's constantly running around. And you want to spend time with your clients. You want to spend time getting more listings. You don't want to spend your time trying to figure out why these images aren't being formatted properly, or why this isn't happening, or making some decision about yet another marketing tool that you need to use. We just tie that all together in one.
I'll mention this too. It is like the cliche, and I'm sure every company says it, but like a good example is our first hire. So outside of Branick, Brendan, and myself, our first hire was a head of customer success to come in and run our whole support and success team, and prioritizing like actually being able to build the software, but also support the software and support people like onboarding and know how to use it. And if there are issues, they have a contact and they actually know the name of the person that they need to contact. It was a huge emphasis from the start, continues to be a huge emphasis for us today. We pretty much hire as many customer success people as we do engineers. And for a lot of the company's history, we've had more customer success people than we do engineers. So like actually providing support and not just being software that you throw out there and you kind of, you're just thrown into the wolves. We definitely have a huge emphasis on making sure people have someone to talk to if they do run into any issues or if they need help get it set up.
And that brings up a really good and interesting point, Matt, because when you start a company with 3 friends, you've got that intrinsic culture, right? You know what each other is going to say before you finish the sentence. And now you're at a point, and let me just step back for a second, and your customer is at the center of everything you do, right? And so that's your value. Now you've got to grow your team. And I believe you're growing your team somewhat remotely as well. So how do you retain that customer focus and that culture as you grow out? Because this is one thing that, is challenging for kind of everybody. What are you guys doing to sort of keep that culture and keep that value front and center?
Yeah, it's been a pretty intentional process for us. We have grown the team entirely remotely. We've grown the team entirely remotely during COVID. So we went from 3 people to now nearly 20 people on the team in the last, all during the pandemic. So it's been a very interesting process. Like a lot of the team we had met recently, we've been able to get the opportunity to meet a few of them. But we have people in 5 countries, all over many time zones. So it's difficult to keep that culture, much less, as you continue to grow, instill it in the next person. So I think to point to one specific thing that we've done well, specifically related to that, would be our onboarding for every new employee. That is something that we take very seriously. Those first few weeks of an employee getting up to speed is, it's a million Zoom calls, but you get to learn really the entire business, and you have full insight into any area of the business. We're an open book. You shadow every department in your first week or two. So engineers that are getting onboarded, they sit in the inbox with a customer support person for a day. Like they're in there helping to answer tickets before they have ever written like a line of code. That it's something where you get face time no matter with a customer, no matter what role you're in. And I mean, that carries on even after you're onboarded, where the success team has like direct access to our engineering team. There's not a siloed business at all. And I think that's true in really any startup, but I think it's been a big focus for us, and it's been a successful kind of implementation of every single hire has been able to understand the customer. They sit on onboardings for the customers. We set them up for calls with customers. We've had engineers like bring us new customers in like their own city. They're like, oh, I know a real estate photographer, and like we'll have them help them get set up. So we keep even like the engineering. You can get pretty siloed away from the customer, not really understand the full, especially if you're not a photographer or haven't worked in real estate. It's hard to know those intricacies. So we've made that a big focal point.
I'd approach the question from two sides to some degree. And I think with any small team like ours that's growing, that early culture, every new person joining the team is going to drastically change that culture. So that I think speaks to Matt's first point there, in that we are hyper-focused with them throughout their first couple of weeks with a really catered onboarding experience that will include touch points throughout the business and really emphasize that focus on the success of our customers, whether you're actually being hired for a customer success role or whether you're an engineer that's going to be in the weeds building features on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's one kind of key part to it. But then I think also you need to be aware of yourself, because when you hire that one employee, yes, they'll have a key influence on the team and the culture as a whole, but they're going to be looking to the rest of that initial team to know what to do, what the key principles are, so to speak, of that team culture. It's nothing that you can write down on a sheet of paper and hand to them and say, hey, here are the 5 things that are most important for the Aryeo team. That's not how it works at an early startup, right? They're gonna catch on to what you as founders and what you as an early team member are prioritizing. So I think for us, yes, we'll go through that very dedicated onboarding experience, but in the months and weeks after that, they're still going to see many members of the team continue to kind of reiterate those values through their actions, right? You're going to have engineers constantly jumping in, helping the customer success team figure out bugs, handle customer questions, right? Everyone on the team is having touch points with customers. And so, yes, we're going to have that very dedicated onboarding experience so that the culture that they bring kind of reinforces those key values, but then also the rest of the team is the key example for them on how to act as well. So that's kind of, I approach it kind of from both sides of that team needs to continue to express those values, and then we'll try to cultivate that in that new individual as well to make sure everyone's kind of aligned and on the same page.
Love it. Branick, any closing thoughts on growing your culture? Or the boys nailed that?
They nailed it. Yeah, they nailed it.
It's interesting, right? Because culture is what happens when you're not in the room. And you grow a team and you're remote, and that's what's happening when you're not in the room, right? So to your point, you have to be very, very intentional. And the fact that you guys are in alignment right here on how you're implementing it already speaks to that. So super, super cool. So shifting gears a little bit, you've got this big team now. Talk to me about the future of Aryeo. Why are we bringing on all these team members? Like, what is this? And, where are you guys available? Where are you looking to expand? Like, talk to me about the future, the today and the future of the business.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it goes back to our core thesis. We think content is very important to real estate. I think it's going to be increasingly important. Right now, we're seeing like the early parts of the battles for eyeballs being played out in the country as new entrants like CoStar and others come in for portals. And all of a sudden, portals are going to need to start differentiating from each other. think we've already seen this over the past few years with Zillow launching Zillow 3D tours and all these new types of content that are coming out as well. And I think when we just look at that as like a whole category, it makes a lot of sense. And I think there's going to be a lot of need for infrastructure to ensure that content can move seamlessly throughout the industry and that it can be used seamlessly throughout the industry as well. And really, that's what we want to build, is that kind of underlying behind the scenes infrastructure for content everywhere, where we are working with all parties behind the scenes and helping everyone across the board. In many ways, it's like a Dropbox for the real estate industry, but one that can help you do stuff with your content as well. That's what we want to build. We're chugging along on that path right now, and it's been an exciting journey so far. I'm sure there'll be a lot of changes, and we're always learning new things and making different revisions. But I think at the core, just focusing on the customer, make sure we're solving the right problems for them is the right place to be. And we're always making revisions to that. Even right now, we're constantly running revision or experiments. We've got like 3 experiments lined up for the next 3 months that are going to set a lot of our goals and vision for the next year after that too. So it's definitely a process, but it's been fun so far, and we're excited to keep growing it.
And on the integration side, on the MLS side, because you're integrated with the MLSs, right? Are you all throughout the US? Are you in North America? Is there ambitions for going beyond? What does that look like geographically speaking? Yeah,
so we just signed our first MLS integration down in Florida with one of the MLSs there. Now, our customer base is pretty much everywhere, pretty much every city in the country right now in the US, and we're in about a dozen other countries as well, a lot in Canada too. Nice. So our customer base is everywhere. Now we're looking at a few specific geographic areas, and let's dive deep in those areas. Let's see how deep we can take those integrations. So let's start with Florida. Let's integrate with the MLS. Let's integrate with the portals there. Let's integrate with the top brokerages there, and let's build out that full ecosystem. And I think that's what you'll probably see from us over the next 12 months of what does this full complete picture look like once you have it up and running in a city. And then I think the year after that will be, okay, how can we take this from 1 city to 50 cities to 100 cities, et cetera.
Amazing. So I got 2 last questions, and I think they're going to be kind of fun. So the first one that I love asking is, where'd the name come from?
Yes. It's actually the Latin root for photographer, actually.
Okay. And talk. So how did you guys get through to
I'm just
that?
Kidding with you, Mike.
Okay, I was like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding with you. There were no photographers when they were making Latin.
I don't know, maybe painters. I don't know, Latin maybe root for painters.
I just joke with people.
Sculptors.
And I see if anyone calls me out on it. But no, we just made it up. It's just a bunch of letters that we made up. There is no true name.
Well, I don't believe you. I don't believe that that's the right story either.
I know, right? It's better you go with the fake story. Yeah, it means nothing. There's nothing. I mean, and that's what we kind of wanted to do, something we could build our own meaning into. But now we may change the name. We've thought about it a lot. People are like, this name sucks. But it seems to stick too at the same time. So it's tough.
Beautiful, guys. All right, to bring this home, I want, real quick, what each of you is most excited for with the business for the next 12 months here. Don't all start at once.
Yeah.
I'll jump in. I'll jump in. Okay, Branick can start.
Oh, okay. I'm starting. I think I'm most excited to see how far we can take like the value to the customer, right? And up until this point, our customers have been photographers, agents, brokers, and I would like to see how far we can take that all the way to the consumer of someone that's buying and selling a home. Now, what does that actually mean? We can dive into that on another podcast, but I'm excited to see how far we can take helping with content, providing actual value to home buyers and sellers throughout the world. And I think that'll be a big experiment. What I'm most excited for probably this next year.
Awesome.
We mentioned that we signed our first MLS contract.
Yeah.
That, at least for me, represents one of those next key parties, right? But one of the other pieces of the puzzle of this content map that we've kind of been talking about, how content flows throughout the system. And so building out those additional pieces will kind of have this feedback effect on the product, in the sense of every one of those additional parties that gets on board, that is part of the Aryeo platform, is going to add more and more value to the product over time for the customers that we already have in place. And so kind of continuing to tackle each of those different parties within the system, provide a really strong content platform for them to use to meet their needs, whether it's that broker, agent, MLS, portal, is really exciting for me over the next couple of months. We mentioned we have a couple of experiments that relate to some of that. And so executing on those with the team that we built over the last few months, and then evaluating how successful those are, continuing to iterate is something I'm really excited about.
Totally. Those are both really exciting things. Matt, what are you going to say?
Yeah, I was Branick and Brendan both, you guys kind of focus on the customer. I'll take it a different direction. Over the last few months, we've been able to start partnering with a lot of really cool companies. Mostly like recently it's been in sort of like the content space, like 3D providers and people that are directly related to listing content. But we've been able to get plugged in with a much broader group of just other prop tech founders and people working on really cool stuff in the real estate space. So I'm excited to see where our like further integrations can go, further just tech partners and whatnot. It opens just so many doors when we're able to plug what we're doing in with someone who else has built something really cool. So I'm excited to see where that gets taken and kind of how we can work with just the broader prop tech industry as a whole. And yeah,
I love it. And that speaks to our DNA. So appreciate you throwing that one out there, guys. Kudos on the progress, kudos on the product and the company. Amazing stuff. For those people that are listening in and they want to learn more, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
I think I'd definitely check out our website, aryeo.com. Yeah, usually you probably should spell this earlier. aryeo.com. That's how you spell it. Reach out. You could. It's really easy to get a hold of us. We're all on, I don't know what, Twitter, LinkedIn, all those deals. But we have our team page on the site if you want to get in touch with us individually. Otherwise, yeah, definitely reach out, and it's the easiest way to find us.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, guys, and I look forward to seeing what comes in the next 12 months. It sounds like lots of exciting stuff on the horizon.
Yeah. Thanks for having us, Mike.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.